My name is Ann Haag. I am the Practice Management Advisor here at the Chicago Bar Association, and we're here today to talk about how to purchase the right laptop. This is one of the most common questions I get from members calling in and saying, what laptop should I buy? And unfortunately, it's not something that you can give just a blanket response to. And so honestly, part of my motivation for doing this class was to have a concrete set of materials to send people when I do get those questions. So we're going to run through and talk about all the different considerations, some popular models for lawyers, some things that I hear really rave reviews about pretty frequently, and also the technical specifications to look out for. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the different kinds of machines that are out there. Something that I run into a lot is people who are unsure whether or not they want a laptop, or unsure whether or not they need a laptop and a desktop computer, or they have an iPad that they like a lot. And so there are a lot of different options now. Generally, I say that if you only want to have one computer, you should get a laptop or a tablet with a keyboard. I'm a little reticent to suggest just relying on a tablet. We'll talk about this more in a minute, but I kind of view tablets as more like an additional thing. I think a desktop with a tablet would be a great option, but if you buy a desktop, you will also need something portable that you can take home to court, to board meetings, etc. And so that's where that portability of a tablet or a laptop comes into play. You need to be able to get work done and access your client files no matter where you are. But a lot of people also like the feel of a desktop. Some people need the power of a desktop. That, I don't know how much lawyers, unless you're running a lot of installed software, I'm not sure that you're really going to need the power of a desktop. That gets more into the people who need the most power from computers, honestly, are gamers, which I'm going to guess probably doesn't apply to a ton of people who are watching this program. But many lawyers use a laptop or a full-featured Windows tablet like the Surface Pro as their primary computer. Others have a desktop at the office and then an ultralight laptop, Surface, or iPad Pro for everywhere else. When deciding on your setup, you need to consider where and how you need to be able to get work done. So just to kind of paint a picture, here are a couple of different setups that you could consider. You can have a MacBook Pro or a ThinkPad laptop with a docking station at the office for connecting to a monitor. We'll talk about that more when we get into accessories, how to kind of bridge, if you don't want a desktop, how to make your laptop kind of serve as a desktop. An iMac or a Dell desktop at the office, and an iPad or a Chromebook for mobile computing, or a Microsoft Surface Pro for everything, which Surfaces are kind of, and we'll talk about this more in a minute also, but Surfaces kind of seem to be one of the, and I would say maybe the iPad Pro as well. They are tablets that are kind of transcending that boundary where they're so powerful and so advanced that they kind of start to resemble a laptop more closely. But whatever you do, avoid the temptation to get a heavy, big laptop. If you need desktop power, get a desktop computer. If you need portability, get a lightweight laptop. Don't try to mix the two. You'll regret it every time you carry around your 7-pound laptop. This laptop is too big. This is not, this is a fine, for my purposes, this is a good laptop because I don't take it with me anywhere. I just leave it up at my desk. It's the work computer. But if this was something where I was if I had my own practice or something, this would drive me crazy. I complain just about having to lug it down here from the office. It's too heavy. If you do get a desktop computer, you want at least a 22-inch monitor. That's a good minimum to keep in mind. All right, so a little bit more about tablets. Tablets are great for a lot of things. They're very portable and very easy to read documents on. Email and the internet work great. However, they aren't always a great substitute for a laptop or a standalone solution. If your practice requires you to create a lot of written content, you might want to test how comfortable you are typing on a tablet with a keyboard accessory. If you prefer dictation, speech inputs might be limited on your device, so that's something to think about if you do really want to rely on a tablet instead of a laptop. A few drawbacks to think about with tablets. They have limited data storage capacity. It's usually quite a bit smaller than a proper laptop, although again, that is something that is changing because they are getting a lot more sophisticated. App compatibility. So tablets run on different operating systems than like the iPad has its own operating system. It's not the same exact thing as your MacBook. So it's a little bit, it's a different operating system. The iPad versus an Apple laptop.
Really?
Right. And so if you want to use Microsoft Word on an iPad, you have to install, you can't just rely on, you can't install the programs in the same way that you would with a proper laptop. You have to download a specific app, and it's probably called Word for iPad or something. But it's a specific thing. And so if you have programs that you absolutely need to function, you need to make sure that those are going to be available on the iPad or whatever tablet you want. So again, it's just about knowing what you need and making sure that it's available on the platform that you want. They sometimes have limited connectivity to printers, scanners, and other hardware, but again, constantly advancing. And also tablets might be banned in the courtroom, so that is something to think about.
Yeah.
And it just depends, on the jurisdiction and everything. All right, but again, all that being said, certain Surface models and the newest iPad Pro really seem to straddle the line between laptop and tablet. They're getting more advanced and might offer more to compete with traditional laptops. So just something to keep in mind.
A quick question about,
Yeah.
why did you put that in there about tablet might be banned in the courtroom? Do you mean assuming nobody would bring in a laptop? All of that, are you saying it would all be banned or something specific?
The circumstance, yeah. So just to repeat the question for the online audience, this person asked why I included that information about the tablets potentially being banned in the courtroom, and what exactly that means. So I found that online as advice for lawyers to consider, and so I guess there are some jurisdictions in which tablets are kind of lumped in with cell phones, so they're viewed more as mobile devices, and so they would be included in that ban. Yeah, it's something to be aware of. And again, tablets are getting so much more like laptops that it probably is. I don't know how much that would apply. It just depends on where you are. All right, so now I wanted to get into the operating systems. And so this gets into what you asked before about Apple versus PCs and everything. All right, so let's start with Windows. Windows has long dominated the professional world. We'll talk about why that's changing on the next slide, but historically, Windows has almost been a given for a work computer. If you are buying a computer for work, you're probably going to get a PC. That's just because the software that people rely on is Windows specific until recently, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. It is changing though, so you no longer need to feel beholden to Windows. If you have been a Mac user at home and you love your Mac and you hate having to go to work and use Windows every day, you might now have the option to start integrating Mac into your work life. If you know and love Windows though, that keeps things relatively simple. It does kind of, it helps in terms of compatibility, I will say. I think if you really love Mac, it is absolutely feasible to start using a Mac as a lawyer, but you will run into certain issues. It's kind of like if you, the best way that I can think to describe it is if you try to upload a Word document to the Google Drive, it's a little clunky because you can't open, Google is a separate thing, and so they want you to use Google Docs, and so it's not as easy as using a Google Doc. In order to use the Word document, you have to download it each time and then re-upload it to the Google Drive. So it's just a little bit more arduous. There are a little bit more steps that you have to take, but it is feasible.
than what than if you had a Apple?
Not in that example. Yeah. So what I'm saying essentially is that if you are a Mac user, you might run into some issues where you have to like take a few extra steps, or like you have to work a little bit harder. So, all right, the most recent version of Windows is Windows 10, and it launched in 2015. This includes the Microsoft Office suite, the new Microsoft Edge web browser, and Cortana, Microsoft's voice-controlled digital assistant. If you're jumping to Windows 10 from an older version with the purchase of a new laptop, you might encounter a bit of a learning curve. I believe we have a how-to video in the how-to library about using Windows 10. So if that is an issue that you're running into, you can check that out. All right, so now let's talk about Mac a little bit. The rise of the cloud is what has made the Mac OS a stronger option for lawyers.
Stronger or less?
A stronger option, yeah. Previously, a lot of software lawyers relied on wouldn't work on Macs. Rocket Matter and Clio launched the first cloud-based practice management solutions in 2015, which really opened the door for Macs to have a greater presence in the legal world. You still need to know your need set. So like not every legal software is compatible with Macs. One that jumps to mind immediately is Smokeball. That is a practice management platform that you cannot use on Macs. It's Windows specific. If you rely on something that won't run on a Mac, that might rule this out. You can always people have workarounds. There have been like diehard Mac lawyers out there who have been creating workarounds to this for forever. But if you're just to keep things easy, I suggest not doing that. It gets into like remoting in and like remote desktops and everything. Macs are also generally considered to be more expensive than laptops that run Windows, but I think that this is a misconception. If you're buying a good Windows computer, so like a good PC, the price discrepancy isn't significant. If you're comfortable on a Mac, don't let price make the decision for you. There has long also been a misconception that Macs are somehow inherently more secure and safe from viruses than PCs. Yeah, they have really capitalized upon that idea in their advertising also. Some of the like very old Mac, or not very old, but like 13 years old, the advertisements were like, there was the guy who represented Mac and the guy who represented a PC, and the guy who was a PC was always like sneezing and sick or running slowly. But so yeah, they've really taken advantage of that. But the reasoning for that is that the market has been made up much more prominently with PCs. So it has been more financially advantageous for bad actors to invest time in designing viruses that target PCs than it has been to design programs that target Macs. The thing to be aware of there is that Macs have started to make up a much larger portion of the market within the past decade. So I think it is reasonable to assume that people are going to start targeting Macs more than they did previously. So if you're using a Mac, it's still a good idea to use like an antivirus program. You still have to be aware of like phishing and everything like that. So having a Mac isn't like a free pass to just not care about security. There's still a lot to consider. Chromebooks. These are kind of the major third party here. Chromebooks run Google's Chrome operating system instead of Windows or Mac. So it's a totally different operating system. It visually is very similar to using the Chrome web browser. If you are really comfortable with that and you like the layout of it a lot, you might want to try it out. I'm going to be honest, I have a very hard time working on a Chromebook. For the very superficial, simple reason that the keyboard is a little bit different. Like just one or two buttons are different. And so the caps lock button has been replaced by a search button and it drives me crazy. I can't type on these things. But that might be more of a me learning new skills problem than anything. But for lawyers, there are basically two use cases for a Chromebook. You use the web for everything. All your files are on the cloud, like Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, or Box, and you use G Suite or the Office web apps for all of your documents, email, calendar, etc. You only need, or the second scenario is that you only need secure remote access to your computer, whether it is sitting in your office or in the cloud. So if either of those apply to you, then a Chromebook might be a really great option. They are cheaper. They're extremely lightweight generally. This one is a little bit clunkier, but I feel like this is probably a couple years old also. The operating system is very lightweight, so they don't need to have a lot of the like high-end tech specs that we're gonna run into. As a result, they're thin and light with all-day battery life and inexpensive. They're also pretty secure, the operating system. Your data stored on a Chromebook is encrypted, and there are various safeguards against malware and other malicious hacking. But on the other hand, most lawyers need access to local software, Microsoft Office if nothing else, making a Chromebook an inexpensive option for a second computer at best. So I think they're worth including, just to be aware of, but I think they probably won't meet the need sets that most people have. All right, so this section I called the homework because this is kind of the background information that you need to know when you're, maybe you've decided, you want either a Windows or a Mac, but this is the information that you now need to use to decide on like an actual model. It's the unfun stuff. So first of all, what's a reasonable price point? Instead of poring over like technical specifications that maybe are confusing and kind of intimidating to you, you can use price as a rough proxy to determine the quality of the machine you're looking at. It's not a perfect indicator, but most computers have similar hardware at similar price points, so it's at least a starting point if you feel overwhelmed by the technical details. And while these change quickly, because technology advances pretty quickly, prices tend to stay fairly constant for a given tier. So if you're like totally uninterested in learning about the technical details or paying attention to the slide that I'm going to cover next, price is a reasonable way to think about it. If you intend to keep a computer for 3 to 4 years before you upgrade, here's what you should expect. If you're buying a laptop, you should expect to spend a minimum of $1,000. If you are buying a desktop, expect to spend a minimum of $750, not counting the monitor. And those really are minimums. So anything that falls short of that probably isn't going to cut it. If price alone is not enough detail for you, you can always consider using Apple's base Mac configurations as a minimum standards guide. Apple doesn't sell a computer that it doesn't consider capable of giving like a really great experience. That means the specs of its cheapest computers in each category are a good guide to the minimum that you should probably be getting. So yeah, example, if you're shopping for a laptop, use the 13-inch MacBook Pro as your baseline, even if you're not looking at a Mac. If you're shopping for a desktop, use the base Mac Mini as your reference point. Don't get a Windows PC with a slower processor, less memory, or a smaller hard drive than the numbers that you're going to see in those specifications. I think it's a good idea to upgrade the processor and memory from the base configuration no matter what you get, but even if you don't, you'll be in pretty good shape by following the minimums on those like Apple spec sheets. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about what all those specifications mean. I included this all written out like in sentence form in the notes that I posted that you can download for this class, the materials, because this is a good reference for you to have. So if this, I included this slide of like the Greek letters because it's all Greek to me phrase that came to mind when we start to get into this stuff. And obviously some people are a little bit more into it than others, and it's really not as complicated as it sounds. But whenever I have bought a laptop, I've gone into the Apple store and said like, what do I need? And so if you want to know what they're selling you, this is a good like just kind of glossary to keep in mind. All right, so the processor. This is essentially the brain of the computer. In any given store, most computers will run on Intel Core i3, i5, or i7 processors. You don't need to get too hung up on this, but know that the higher numbers are more powerful, maybe more than you need. You want at least an 8th generation i5 or i7 processor. To confirm that it's an 8th generation, you look at the model number. If it starts with an 8, like 8250U, it's an 8th generation. You can also just look for the term quad core. Quad, yeah, quad core. So again, doesn't really matter what it means. I'm just telling you what to look out for. RAM, so RAM, which means random access memory. You can get by with 8 gigabytes, but you really should aim for a minimum of 16 gigabytes. More RAM means more longevity for your machine. RAM is what keeps all the apps on your computer active. It temporarily carries software and files in current use, enabling the processor to access data much faster in comparison to accessing data on storage devices. Less RAM means more drain on other resources, which means a slower running computer, essentially. I recently heard this described as like short-term memory, essentially, where it's like the recent stuff that you have open, it allows that to function well.
So when you say store, if you're storing everything in the cloud.
Right, so that's a good point. So this person's point was if you... What if you're storing everything in the cloud? Do you not need as much space?
Like OneDrive.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like Box or Dropbox or something like that. Yeah, that's a good point. If you are... So RAM is a little bit different. That gets more into hard drive, which we'll talk about in just a second. RAM is more... It has to do with like power. And so like the speed of your computer. More RAM means that your computer is going to function more quickly, essentially, because it has to do with what you're working on presently, like keeping the programs moving, essentially. So it's like that short-term memory example is the best that I can think of it, where it's like storage space for the stuff that you're working on presently. And then, so yeah, a hard drive is a little bit different, which we'll talk about right now. And if you store a lot of stuff in the cloud, hard drive is what you're gonna consider maybe downgrading on a little bit. So hard drive is like the computer memory.
There's 3 different: processor, RAM, and hard drive.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So only get a solid state drive. I don't know what that means, but I know that it's important. Ideally, it won't be a hybrid drive. So this is where the vendor puts an 8 gig solid state drive for the operating system and then adds 500 gigabytes for a larger drive for data. To the user, it appears as one, but it's actually hybrid, and so you don't want that. You want a solid state drive or SSD.
I think if I can interject,
Yeah,
I think
please do.
solid state means there's no spinning disk, there's no moving
Yeah.
parts in it, it's all
That's
in
what I think.
the
Okay.
electronics. If it's a hybrid like this, which is what I have on my 5-year-old machine, there's a smaller solid state area, but most of the storage is on the disk.
Okay.
And so they're subject to, crashing.
Yeah.
Like anything else. I've never had that happen, but.
Okay. That's a really good explanation. Thank you.
It's solid state is no moving parts, and anything else has a spinning hard drive in it.
Okay. So just so that the webcast audience can get that, solid state means that there are no moving parts in the actual like hardware of the machine, whereas a hybrid would have like a spinning disk, and so there's just more room for malfunction when you get into like the actual moving parts. So 256 gigabytes is the new low end for a hard drive. If your budget affords it, upgrade beyond that. It just gives you future flexibility, even if you're using the cloud. It depends on the cost. I'm not sure how much it costs to upgrade, but yeah, 256 is like the minimum. So the screen. Given how we interact with our phones and tablets, a touch screen can be very handy. Touch is normalized and Windows is getting far more app-minded. The importance of the screen just depends on how you like to work. Also consider your eyes. If you spend a ton of time staring every day at the screen, consider going with the higher resolution display, like the Retina displays on MacBooks. Battery life. A higher powered processor might hurt your battery life, so weigh your need set here. So this is why it's important to not necessarily just get the most powerful processor that there is, because you might not need that, and it's just going to drain your battery. So a higher power. Weigh your need set. If battery life is important to you, it might be worth going with an i5 versus an i7 processor. You'll have to make, so in terms of other hardware, you'll have to make this decision based on your individual need set. Many modern laptops no longer include CD drives, which we talked a little bit about before we started, which can be important for lawyers. Like, how many times have you been handed a CD full of PDFs during e-discovery? You need that ability. Your machines probably don't have a drive built in anymore, which is it's annoying. But it's also easy to buy an external cheap one. It doesn't have to be super fancy. But it is something to think about. You don't want to wait until you need it that day. If you give a lot of presentations, you may feel strongly about VGA versus HDMI ports. New Mac models have done away with these altogether and now only have Thunderbolt ports, so you'll need an adapter. You always want to be prepared. The same applies for USB drives. It might seem, this might seem obvious, but don't forget to factor in the weight of the machine. If you're going to be lugging your laptop around frequently, you want something light. That's not something that you want to be kicking yourself for. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly why I got the tablet.
Yeah.
I have a laptop, and when I have a hearing or something, I have to bring the laptop because it has more functionality. But I totally bought it based upon the weight and some other stuff too, but the weight was just crucial.
Yeah.
And look around.
Yeah, absolutely. So the comment from this person was just that's why they have a tablet, because it's just the laptop is heavy and it's a pain. And so, yeah, tablets really can kind of increase that flexibility. Like maybe you have a laptop that you use day to day, but then you have a tablet that you take with you when you travel, something like that. Yeah. It's a nice bridge. All right, lastly, Wi-Fi capabilities. Again, I don't know what this means, but you want a wireless card capable of utilizing 802.11n, A, B, or G. All you need to know is that 802.11n currently offers the fastest internet speeds. All right, let's talk about warranties for just a minute. For laptops and tablets, it's a good idea to buy the warranty. For desktops, it's a little less straightforward. Laptops just are good. It's a good idea to get the warranty because of how you use them. You're probably carrying it around a lot. It's more likely that it might get dropped. Even sometimes a hard enough whack will even put a really solid ThinkPad out of commission. A 3 or 4 year warranty that includes accidental damage is really a must for any laptop that you intend to carry around. Desktops are different since they just sit in one place. It's a little less important. The parts aren't as likely to break, and they aren't all that expensive to replace. By the time a hard drive fails or a graphics card burns out on a desktop, it really might be time to upgrade that part anyway. So one thing to think about, depending on how often you find yourself calling tech support, whether that means Geek Squad or your daughter or son, you might want a warranty that includes general support. For example, if you sometimes get hung up getting a printer or scanner to work properly, or you get lost when you accidentally hit a key combination that closes a panel in Outlook, you might want to get something like Dell's Enhanced Support or Apple's AppleCare. With these, you can just pick up the phone and call someone who can help you solve your problem. So that's a pretty good option. I have a lot of people call with issues that are honestly so specific to the computer or to a program that they're working in that I really can't help all that well. And I always say, it's probably better to just, if you can't get into your Apple ID or something, it's better to call them than it is to call me, because they have more information and they'll be able to help you better.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned Geek Squad, and there's Best Buy right up there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and I don't know if you'll know, but is that just sort of a freestanding, open-ended help desk, where you could bring your machine in or ask them a question? Because
Yeah.
I've never used it, but I think I'm getting real close.
Yeah.
My desk or laptop at home it has a very hard time connecting to the internet. And I know my modem is good, my router is good, all the other devices are on that same Wi-Fi network at home. But it just, every time I open it up, it takes,
Yeah.
So I thought, if I could just call Best Buy or, Geek Squad about it.
Yeah.
That's how it works, so.
Yeah. So this person's question was like, is the Geek Squad essentially just like a freestanding help desk? Can you go in and just ask questions and everything? I have not used Geek Squad, but my understanding is that it's pretty comparable to the Apple like Genius Bar, where it's probably better to like schedule an appointment than to just show up and walk in. You might have to wait. But yes, it is something where you can just go and say like, help me with this issue that I'm having. Mm-hmm.
I have Geek Squad in the background where you can't see things, they're back there loading forever.
Yeah.
It had slowed down my computer, so you have to buy, I think it's a year warranty is what it runs.
Oh, okay.
But they went in and cleaned it up, and even weeks later when I still was not satisfied with some other things that they had done, just took it back in and
That's great.
It's real simple.
Yeah, all right.
And they answer all your questions.
Oh, that's great.
And so it's kind of like a subscription almost, like you
It
bought
is.
a 1 year thing
It
and
is.
then you have like that whole year to go in.
In person, not over the phone, is that correct?
You have to make an appointment.
Okay, yeah, so you have to make an appointment. My understanding is also that like in some circumstances they will come to you and help like set things up, like if
At
you
your house.
yeah like they'll actually help you set up your TV or your computer or whatever. So yeah, I think that can be a really great option. All right, so that kind of gets into what we're going to talk about now, which is where should you buy the computer. Macs are easy. It's short answer. If you want a Mac, go to the Apple store or shop Apple's website online. The prices are the same and the shipping is free. Apple doesn't do any kind of like promotional deals, so you get what you get. If you want a Windows PC, avoid Best Buy maybe and shop on the manufacturer's website where you can customize your computer and get the best deal. If you want a fairly standard configuration, you may be able to buy a better deal on Amazon. It doesn't hurt to look anyways. If you buy on Amazon, be sure to buy from a reputable seller though. That's an easy detail to overlook on Amazon that has resulted not just with computers or electronics, but with a lot of things, a lot of consumer complaints. The point is, make sure that you get what you need, just not what happens to be on the big box store's shelves. So like at Best Buy, they generally carry only 1 or 2 configurations, the cheapest one and the most expensive one. Which is annoying. If you want to max out the memory, but you don't care to pay for the top of the line processor and a bunch of hard drive space, you probably need to order online from the manufacturer. That being said, if you feel like you need to try out a machine first, I am a pretty tactile person. I like to be able to like type on a computer before I buy it. You can always go to the store that carries the brand that you're looking for and then use the manufacturer's website to actually configure the computer the way that you want it. And always do, so what you should do if you're gonna do that is you should actually like go through the process, like the pre-checkout process on the manufacturer's website, build the computer that you want, check the price, and then go into the store. And so like if Best Buy does have the machine that you want, maybe at a cheaper price, you can just get it there. So if you're looking for a Windows computer, it's a little bit more of a game. And so just start with the manufacturer and then go from there. Accessories, this is a good thing to think about. And if you're shopping in person, people will not shy away from talking to you about these things. So again, this is all in the notes, the handouts, but the one that I want to talk about the most is a dock. A dock basically allows you to turn your laptop into a desktop. So like at my desk upstairs, what I do when I get back up there is I plug this laptop into a dock, and it sits closed on my computer, but is attached to two big monitors. There have been a lot of studies done about the dual monitors and how it boosts productivity and like increases your ability to retain information. I have really found that to be true. Now I worked at a law firm that just gave me two monitors, and now it's essentially how I have to work. I can't go back. And so this is kind of a way to bridge that gap between laptop and desktop. So again, it makes laptops more of a feasible option, I think. That being said, if you are looking to do that, make sure that you have two monitors that are identical. For a while, I had like my laptop screen extended to a monitor as two screens, and it killed my eyes. I mean, I was having like vision issues that went away as soon as I got two of the identical monitors. They need to be the same size and the same like screen quality, the same like material. I'm not a doctor, I don't know why, but I know that switching back and forth between those two things can really, really hurt your eyes. You can add on a mouse if you don't love the trackpad, or vice versa. If you have a desktop and you want the trackpad, you can do that also. All right. Mm-hmm.
So you were able to connect your laptop and a desktop or a dock?
No, so I wasn't connecting a desktop. The difference is, so I'm connecting my laptop to two monitors. Yeah, exactly. So there's no like desktop computer involved. But the dock is essentially what allows me to connect to the monitors. Yeah.
I didn't know that you could, when I worked for a corporation, that's exactly what we had.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, now that I'm on my own, we could buy those
Yeah.
types of supplies.
Yeah, totally. The dock, I think it's like, they're not super cheap, but I want to say like maybe $100. It's nothing exorbitant. But yeah, it really does change the way that you work, and for the better, I think. If you get into Macs, that gets a little bit more complicated because they don't. Maybe they do now at this point. I haven't bought a desktop Mac in a very long time, but previously there was no distinction. Like the computer was built into the monitor. Yeah, I think it still is that way. So it's not as simple as just buying another monitor.
That's what my desktop HP. First time I had a desktop in years, I bought one. Someone told me. And the computer was in the monitor.
Yeah. And it's a great idea in terms of like saving space to combine the two, but it does decrease your ability. And I haven't done a ton of research surrounding that, but it might be easy to just add another monitor onto it. But yeah, it's something to think about. All right. I do want to cover, we're running a little bit low on time, but I want to run through some models of computers that are particularly popular amongst the lawyers that I talk to. By far, the most frequent one that I hear about is the Microsoft Surface line of products. People really seem to love these. And there are a lot of different models. They include a laptop tablet hybrid, a touchscreen laptop, and even desktop options. If I was shopping for a Windows laptop, I would probably go with one of these, specifically the Surface Pro X. I think this is probably the most competitive with Apple of all the Windows options out there, just because it kind of, they capitalize on the like design idea, which I think a lot of Windows computers have not done previously, which sounds superficial, but it matters. Microsoft also has on their website a help me choose feature that matches you with the Surface that might work best for you. That's kind of a fun feature. The Lenovo T series, and there are more laptops than just in the screenshot. You can see there's a little arrow to the right that you can pan over. Lenovo seems to really shine when it comes to customer support. So if that's something that's really important to you, you might consider one of those. Also the X series, they're just fast, solid, good keyboards and great customer support. The ThinkPad X1 is particularly popular among lawyers, so that's something to think about. They have this line called the yoga laptops that seem to be kind of like, you can see the one there, it's the one that's like folded. I think they're called yoga because you can like twist them in the same way that you would like a tablet. It's kind of, it toes that line a little bit more between tablet and laptop, although it's definitely on the laptop side. Dell XPS laptops. Dell is popular because it seems to be a little bit cheaper than Lenovo generally, and their displays seem to be what set them apart from other brands. They have really, really good displays from what I hear. All right. And then, so if you're looking for Mac, I don't want to spend a ton of time trying to sway you between Mac or Windows. Odds are that if you probably already have a preference between one or the other. If you're a Mac person, your decision is really between the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air when it comes to laptops, at least. Both boast Retina displays, similar keyboards, and a comparable price range. The one thing to think about if you are looking for a Mac laptop, the MacBook Pro has 4 Thunderbolt ports. The Air has only 2. So
What's a Thunderbolt?
a Thunderbolt, it's the only kind of port that they have anymore. So they have done away with all of the like USB ports and charging ports and everything. And so they just have this one that does everything. So that obviously gets into an issue. Like if you have the Air, which only has 2 of those ports, and you're charging, you're already using up half of the ability to like add anything onto it. So if you want to like plug in a charger for your phone, also that takes up all your space. So that's something to think about if you're like giving presentations or something.
Do all of those have whatever that blue cord goes in there? That's the DSL or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Does every computer have at least that?
So the question was, does every computer have at least like an Ethernet port? No, not anymore. I have an older MacBook Air and it doesn't even have one of these. Windows might be a little bit different, but I don't think it's terribly different at this point. I think everything is just so Wi-Fi based at this point that they have really moved away from that. I don't quite understand the explanation for why laptops seem to be moving to like get away, like to do away with ports, but they really, I mean, especially the MacBook Air only has 2. But so that definitely seems to be the trend. I don't know that that's a great thing. I can understand wanting to do away with like a few of them. Like I don't think you need VGA and HDMI and all that. But this is a tangent, but I just got a new iPhone recently, and I got it when I was at home for the holidays in Cincinnati, and I was driving back to Chicago alone. And the way that I listen to music or podcasts when I drive, which I need to like stay focused and everything, is I plug in an aux cord. And so the new iPhone is also doing the same thing where they're trying to move away from the ports, and so they only have one, and it's the charging port. And so I had to buy like a special adapter that allows me to charge and plug in the aux cord at the same exact time. So it's annoying. I don't know why they're doing that. An aux cord is like an audio cord. It's just, if you're in a car, it's what you plug into your phone to play music. So that's a different scenario, but it does kind of point to the trend of moving away from ports. I don't know why. I'm sure it probably frees up space to improve other things maybe, but it's also a great way to sell adapters.
It's unique.
Yeah. And here's the MacBook Air. The main selling point for the MacBook Air, that's what I have at home. It's very light. I love that. That's a very big thing for me. I don't like carrying around a big heavy thing. But the MacBook Pro is also not too substantial at this point anymore. All right, I want to go ahead and wrap things up. Here is my contact information. For the webcast audience, my email is ahaag@chicagobar.org. If you have any questions, or if you are looking for a laptop and you're confused and this didn't help clear something up for you, please reach out. I'm happy to help. And download those materials that will help you. All right. Well, yeah. Anything
you.
else? Thank you very much. All right.